Hi viewers, today we have a wonderful guest who is an authority into blockchain, who's been filing patents left, right, center, everywhere, and then he's been one of the known names in blockchain industry across the globe, and Mr. Keir from Finland, and he's going to share with us his thoughts on various developments happening in blockchain technology, and let's welcome him and hear to his thoughts. Greetings, Mr. Keir. Thank you so much for agreeing to share your thoughts with us. Can you tell us how long you've been associated with blockchain technology and your journey so far?
Well, first, thanks very much for having me on this podcast. I think I first came across Nakamoto's paper either late 2009 or early 2010. And at the time, I thought it looked like a wonderful collection of various things, cryptography and mathematics and databases and stuff like that. And then I think it was on and off over the next 3 years. I kept dipping into it and seeing what was going on in the community, because it was back in the early days. Nobody really understood what was going on with blockchain. And it was finally in about 2013 that I took the plunge and really started putting some real time into it. So that's my sort of early history.
Okay, so you started almost same time as Satoshi Nakamoto.
I think I was about a year after him. And at that point I was only interested in the technology itself. So unfortunately I didn't go out and mine 100,000 bitcoins. That's why I'm sitting. That's why I'm sitting here in a Citroen and not a Rolls Royce.
All right. So you've been filing patents in blockchain technology on frequent basis. So how many patents have been granted so far, and how many are pending?
Well, at the moment, I think the total is 4, about to become 5, with my own company. When I was working for my previous employer, I think I submitted about 10 blockchain inventions between 2013 and 15. At that time, they didn't really know what the technology was about, so they've got a couple of grants that I'm the named inventor. And I think the applications that are pending, I've got another 20 or 22 or so.
Oh, that's a significant part.
Yeah, we're looking at about 30 in total. Of course, the grant rate is, I think it's about 60% in that art unit. So I'm hoping I'll have about 15 within the next couple of years.
Okay. So would you like to share with us which one you consider a significant breakthrough of all the solutions you have been proposed and developed so far?
Right. Well, I mean, I've got some. What I've generally been focusing on is the layer sort of directly above blockchain. So when you look at the patent landscape, there's an awful lot of patent applications and patents out there that are kind of like, if we draw a parallel with the internet, it's like people trying to patent selling dog food on the internet or showing video on the internet. They're kind of applications. And at the very base level, you have kind of sort of fundamental blockchain technology like consensus systems. And most of my inventions are kind of one layer up from that. So they're still general, not focused on a particular industry or vertical. But I've been generally looking at how can the existing blockchain infrastructure be improved and connect better with existing technologies like databases or digital certificates, things like that. But I have them sort of all the way up to sort of specific applications, and then I've got a couple of consensus system ideas that are currently pending as well. So pretty much across the range, but mainly focusing just above the base technology.
So are nascent blockchain susceptible to 51% attacks? If so, can we fully overcome this compromise?
Sorry, are you asking about the 51% attack there?
Yes.
Wasn't entirely. Yeah, it's a real risk. I don't think it's going to be a problem for the big blockchains like Bitcoin or Ethereum because they're so large. But for smaller blockchains that are public and open, it's a real risk that somebody could come in and take over the mining power and then start basically completely controlling the coin. And that's particularly the case where a blockchain is just a straight clone of something like Bitcoin with a few parameters changed, and they're using the same consensus system. So if I was launching a new small blockchain, I would stick a different proof of work system on it if I was going to use proof of work. Instead of 2 times SHA-256 hash, why not do a SHA-256 followed by a Blake or some other hash function where the mining equipment isn't out there, and therefore it's likely to be taken over. But indeed, for small new blockchains, it's a real risk.
Okay. So we reported recently regarding the Volkswagen using blockchain for its cobalt supply chain. What are some productivity gains obtained from such endeavors, and how other industries could simulate such use cases?
Well, I sort of backing up a step there. I do think that supply chain is one of the very good use cases for blockchain. When you have a question of the sort of provenance of the goods on the chain, and when you have all these different parties that receive goods, maybe process them, and then ship them on to the next party. So for something like mining, where you're concerned about ecological issues and ethics, and also quality of goods, it makes sense to me to put that chain on a blockchain, especially since the existing systems don't interact well. So you have a surprising amount of paper involved in traditional supply chains. As for the Volkswagen specific case, I guess we'll have to see. No doubt they'll come out with some report as to whether it was a roaring success or whether in the long run actually didn't work out for them.
Okay, so can we have a Bitcoin blockchain as a security layer in cybersecurity domain? Nothing related to digital coins, but as a security layer for safety. What are the pros and cons and risks involved in implemented?
When it comes to security, that word means so many different things, right? You can talk about securing your data, or securing access, or identifying someone securely. So it's a very broad question. Can we use a blockchain for security? And blockchain as it stands, as the sort of fundamental core technology, the only security it really offers is one of, I suppose, identity and access management. Namely, when I have my private key, I am the only, and if I'm the only one who has the private key to my public Bitcoin address, then I'm the only one who can validly submit transactions using that address. And if it has a balance associated with it, I'm the only one who can spend it. And that really is sort of the fundamental thing that blockchain provides. Now, you can then use that to, for example, issue security tokens in the way that is currently done in centralized systems, where you have like a session token. So you could use blockchain to provide a session tokens in a more decentralized manner. As for how that's going, I don't really know at the moment. It's a possible application of the technology, and it's leveraging the strong identity capabilities that blockchain gives. That an individual has complete control.
At least on the higher level, can you say, is there any risks involved in that?
Well, it's to do with computers and data and networks. So, of course, there's going to be risk. Nothing in human endeavors is risk-free. There's always people trying to subvert a system to their financial or personal gain. And no doubt, if we start seeing these kind of security systems springing up, we'll find that there are all sorts of other weaknesses that we hadn't thought of before. This is the problem with security, is you're kind of playing a game of whack-a-mole, that the malicious parties are always trying new ways to subvert the system to their own gain. And if you have a new system, they will find new ways around it. There's nothing that's going to give us perfect security. This allows us an extra security layer or an extra approach to security. But it's early days, so we're going to see all sorts of strange exploits in the future, I'm sure.
Okay. So as blockchain size grows, transaction rate deteriorates. So how can this drawback be addressed to have seamless blockchain transactions? What are the alternatives?
Well, I think firstly, the increase in the size of the peer-to-peer network is generally not a limiting factor in terms of getting the messages around the network. But indeed, there is a problem where as you have more and more participants, more and more people using clients, you see more and more transactions, and there is an upper limit, and that's a natural case for any system, whether it's a blockchain or a database. And we have a lot of technology to improve transaction rates for databases, and we have databases that are specifically focused on low size, high volume transactions, for example. In blockchain, I'm not sure Nakamoto really sort of, well, he showed a lot of insight into a lot of stuff, so he probably thought about it, but the system as it stands does have these limitations, and they are down to things such as the maximum size of blocks and the rate at which blocks arrive. I think when it comes to improving existing blockchain systems, we're looking at bolt-ons. And if I can use an analogy here, it's like the car engine, right? If you look at the engine in the bonnet, under the bonnet of your car, the core thing is these cylinders and pistons. But then there are heaps and heaps of other things that are bolted onto it. Starter motor, alternator, battery, replacement of carburetors with fuel injection, all sorts of inventions that have come up over the century that followed to make cars more and more reliable and efficient. And I think that's what we're going to see in blockchain too, is that the kind of core part will just chug away as it always has, because it's very, very hard to change. But people will use their ingenuity to, for example, in Bitcoin, there's the Lightning Network to take all these small high volume transactions off the main chain and use the Bitcoin blockchain more as a clearing bank or a settlement system. And similarly, we're seeing, for example, with DAGs, directed acyclic graphs, that they can handle many, many more transactions, but they generally do this at a cost of reducing the decentralization. They add a certain amount of control back to a limited number of participants. So it's all in development, but people are thinking about it all the time. And when I see articles on this issue, there's always progress being made.
I love the way you give analogy for every questions that even I've been following a couple of your YouTube, LinkedIn videos too. The way you connect with the real world scenario, how you explain the technology, connect with that, it's really awesome.
Oh, well, thank you very much. I think I picked that up when I was a maths lecturer in London. That people, I found that the students connected better if they had a real life example to hook the sort of abstract ideas to. So it's a way of working. It doesn't work for everyone, of course. Some people do just like the kind of the pure abstract.
That's a very unique method, and we love it really.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So how can the art industry leverage blockchain? Has there been any successful use cases, especially in managing and protecting IPR?
So IPR, and you've got a sort of a virtual property there, right? It's not you're trying to protect ideas or the way that an idea can be expressed. So we have different areas of IP, like patents, which cover effectively machines that embody ideas, and we have copyright, which is for things like novels and song lyrics and stuff like that. And protecting those are different problems. So when it comes to intellectual property like the written word or music or something like that, you can use the blockchain to record who came up with it first. So then you have a record that says this person wrote this song, and you don't end up with a problem, which we're actually facing in the blockchain world, where somebody says, I wrote this paper. Craig Wright's just done that with Satoshi Nakamoto's paper, registered that it's his, and he's he registered that with the Copyright Office. If Nakamoto had stuck that on a blockchain, Of course, he couldn't because they didn't exist at the point that he published his paper. But if there was a copyright blockchain, then you would have a better indicator that this person really did produce that paper and not this other person. You could say, well, if you did produce this paper, sign this transaction with your private key to prove it. When it comes to patents, they're interesting because I think patents are the closest that the law comes to computer programming. If you look at the language of patents, they read very much like, terms are very well defined and very clearly defined, but it's still open to human interpretation. So there again, it's just a matter of recording who wrote down what. Then ultimately you need courts to decide what the actual meaning of what was written down is and whether a particular invention infringes. And again, for recording the fact that a patent's been filed or awarded, a blockchain may be useful for that, but I can't see smart contracts removing the need for courts to determine whether patents are being infringed.
Mm-hmm. So, which means it won't be a significant breakthrough even if you use blockchain in that front.
Only in terms of having an immutable ledger so that people can't go back and change history. And that's actually not a small thing, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, a lot of legal arguments are he said, she said kind of discussions, and then you need to convince a jury or a judge that you are the party who's telling the truth. So it can add a certain amount of, it can add something extra to that, but I don't see it as being, it's not going to revolutionize this area. Mm-hmm. That would be my guess anyway.
Okay.